You're watching All to Play For, brought to you by Joe and Coral.
Welcome to All to Play For, brought to you by Joe and Coral. As always, I'm joined by my guy, Joey Cole. How you doing, Joe?
Big man, I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. You're looking good today, Joe. Like you've done something different with your hair, haven't you?
I put a bit of swaz on my barnet, mate. Actually, I brushed it. How's that sound for the show?
It's a little sort of party, I'll tell you. It's like...
It's surprised a lot of people. People thought I'd had less hair than this, mate, but it's coming back. But I might I might get the new lawn laid like Rooney in a few months' time. Who knows? Liven me right up as I go into my 40s.
I'll tell you what, mate. I didn't think I could even ever say this, but I think it makes you even more handsome.
You're a gentleman, mate. You and my mum say that. Not even my wife.
Joe, I've got a treat for you today.
Go on.
An absolute treat. We're joined by, I think, a legend of the game. He's one of my favourite players of all time. He's for me, he's my favourite type. He was always that favourite type of footballer. He's someone who left everything out on the pitch. I mean, he describes himself as the olden day James Milner. He's played for his club. He's played for lots of amazing clubs: Sheffield Wednesday, Leeds, West Brom. He made 18 appearances for England. I give you the amazing man that is Carlton Palmer. Yes, Carlton.
Welcome, Carlton. Welcome.
How you doing, Joe? How you doing, Tom? Nice to hear from you. I wouldn't go that far as calling me a legend. I mean, I think I had a decent career, but legends. Listen, when people talk about legends, you're talking about players on a different level, mate. That can only be, that term of legend can only be used for certain elite players, and I'm certainly not one of those. I was a good Premier League player, but certainly not a legend. Maybe a legend at Sheffield Wednesday, the club I played for.
Mate, when I used to watch you, Carlton, and for other teams, when you used to play against myself, but as a fan, for me, that you can have your flair plays, your Joes, I love a player like yourself who left it all out there, who went in, who grafted, who made. That's the sort of player. As a fan, that's my favourite sort of player. It always has been. It always will be. Someone who plays for the badge. Someone who grafts, and you could play a bit as well, Carl. And I remember a couple of absolute bangers that you scored over the years.
Well, if you look at what's happened since I retired, the position I used to play or the way I used to play has become that position that if you get the right player in that position, you win the league title. You know, it's your flair players. You need your flair players, but without your Carlton Palmers, without your Contes, without your those type of players. You know, you look at Man City, they've struggled since Touré's gone in terms of, I know they've gone on and done well, but they've not been as fluent since they've lost the centre-back and then Touré. You've got your bread and butter players who allow your Joe Coles and your Chris Waddles and your players with sublime ability you give them a platform to go and play. You know, if you look at Man City, their rebirth, as you like this season in the Premier League, has come on the back of them not conceding goals because it gives a platform for De Bruyne and fair players to go and express themselves.
Did you find that, Joe, when you had you had Makelele there for that amazing Chelsea side? That was and he was a sort of, and obviously the back line there was unreal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is it as a flair player knowing you've got that behind you? That must have been a massive thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you have so many different components of a team, and I'm trying to. My son, he loves his football. He's watching his football. He's asked me what different roles play and who's the most important player. And there's no most important player. Carlton's right, and Carlton's played 18 times for England. So you have to have a level of ability to play for your country. So Carlton was the antithesis of the player I hated playing against. Carlton Palmers of this world, because they're there. And he was so athletic, so strong, you know, like a Vieira. You know, where anytime you're in that vicinity of them, when they win the ball and they get it and they move it on quickly, so you ain't got time to get it back. So you need all types of players. And Carlton Palmer in that era, especially in the 90s, was the best of type of his box to box midfielder, breaking up play. And that Sheffield Wednesday team that he played for, I loved watching that. I mean, mainly because of your Chrissy Waddle was one of my favourite. But you had Sheridan in the midfield, Carlton, yourself, Warhurst, all these players. Remember that night when 90s football, when I was growing up? And I also remember, I've just recently rewatched the Graham Taylor documentary. Yeah. that is amazing watch. For anyone out there who's listening, go on YouTube and watch that, and you'll see the evolution of football over the years.
Did you ever play against each other?
Yeah, of course I play against Joe when he played for West Ham, when he played for Chelsea. Joe's a terrific player, top player. But, over the years, you see the way, I listen to pundits now, I listen to managers now, and you think the game's been reinvented. The game's simple. All of a sudden, we're talking about holding midfield players, attacking midfield players, number 9 positions. As far as I'm concerned, you've got defenders, midfield players, and attackers. In our day, if you go back, Nigel Clough could play at centre-back, play at centre-forward. He's a football player. Nigel Pearce could play left wing. He could play left-back. He could play centre-back. And people now are getting pigeonholed into certain positions that you've got to have. You've got to be, a complete midfield. You've got to be a complete footballer. You've got to understand the game. And so you should be able to play in any position that the manager would ask you to play on a football field. The game's become a bit complicated for me now. I really, I don't like watching. I pick and choose the teams I want to watch now. I like to watch a Man City in full flow the way that Pep likes them to play, because that's the way we used to play, But maybe it's because it's become so much of a result-based industry, as we've seen with Frank just getting the sack. Maybe that pressure has come into it, which has stifled the game. But it's not like it. And this is hand on heart, for all the money that's around in the Premier League now, I'd rather have played in my era.
I mean, I'm going to jump on that point straight away there, Carlton, because obviously this is, it's massive. It's really, really big news. And I think that, there's a couple of points you've made there about how football's changed and the, implications. So I'm going to go to you, Joe, obviously, because you're, good pals with Frank. I mean, for me, that it's completely rocked me, that news. But, I mean, have you spoke to Frank at all? Has he been in touch?
I messaged Frank on Saturday, just the usual one. Good luck for the game against Luton. And, for the life, I didn't see it coming. And now when I step back at it and I put my pundit head on and I know the history of Chelsea, I was there for seven years. So, and now looking back at it, you can see, you almost feel a bit soppy for not seeing it coming, because that's the culture of the club. They've gone through managers, and Roman and his team and his directors would argue that the fact that Chelsea, since Roman's come into the job, no club has won more trophies than Chelsea, and that's a fact. So, logic tells you need stability, you need football men in your club trying to build a culture, and that was what I felt from the outside. I thought Frank done a terrific job, and I felt he tried to build a culture. Like all the things we probably talked about as players that we felt could improve the club. We was lucky we played in a team that won things and everything. It was great. But there's also things we said, well, if we could just get this character in the building, this type of play, he was trying to implement that, and he was, and he's bringing through Reece James, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Tammy Abraham, Chelsea players through and through, and they was building it, and possibly overachieved last year.
I thought he overachieved last year. I said last season, if Chelsea finished 8th, they would have done well under Frank. But so to achieve what he did, to finish 4th, get a Champions League spot and get to an FA Cup final, he deserves more than 5 games. But it makes you think, right, why did they give the job to Frank? Look back at it now. Not able to go into the transfer market. Give the job to Frank, bring Jody Morris in, right? They can get the youth players, get the best out of the youth players, because Jody knows them well. Yeah. Frank had taken a couple of boys to Derby on loan. Get him in there, we'll give him a little bit of time. If he done well, fair enough. If he didn't, then we'll get him out. Because that's what they've done. And I think it's cruel what they've done. And do you know what? As a manager, when you're trying to implement something and you're starting to do something, you need the backing. Solskjaer's had the backing of Man United when it was a massive job when Alex Ferguson first left. That was always going to be a massive job to rebuild the football club. So you've got to have some patience and time. I would have bet everything I own that if they let Frank in charge, that they would have finished in the Champions League spot this season. They wouldn't have won the league, but they would have finished in the Champions League spot. I 100% believe that.
I agree with that, Carl. The thing for me, Carlton, as well, and Joe, that I find is that I think, exactly what Carlton said. I think bringing these, Frank was there, Jody was there to bring these young players through. And I think at most clubs that's fine, right? I think as an outsider as well, who's someone who's not got a lot of love for Chelsea necessarily, I actually felt that made Chelsea a very likeable team. They're bringing youth players through. It felt like the essence of the club had changed. But it hasn't, has it?
It's a real tough one to me to talk about because I know everyone involved. Do you know what I mean? I know, obviously, Frank, I know Petr Cech, I know Jody, I know the owner, I know the board members. So it's a tough one to comment. But I've got to say, what I feel the problem is, and they would argue it's not a problem because Chelsea have won everything over the last 20 years more than anyone. So the people making decisions will argue it's not a problem. But the problem has always been at Chelsea, I feel, players at the club have too much of an opinion on what's going on. They have too much, they have like a direct line to the people upstairs, and I feel this has happened for a long time. I mean, my time at Chelsea, you know me to now, Tom. Yeah. 7 years. I've never spoke to a director. Yeah. I've never spoke to a board while I've been playing in the sense like, if I'm not in the team, I knuckle down, I get on with it and I get back in the team. If I'm playing well, I left all that to other people. So the problem at Chelsea, and in my opinion, is that needs to change if there's going to ever be continuity, because I feel the sacking of Frank was the harshest out of all of the sackings of the managers, because he's not had a bad spell in 18 months. He took a team from nothing, lost their best player, no recruitment's coming through, and he's built them into something. And I feel it's the harshest sacking out of all the Chelsea managers. And again, people will throw that at me. Well, he's your mate. You've got emotional tie to him and things like that. And yeah, I'll say, yeah, fair enough, maybe. But when I think logically, and I think, right, if I'm a owner of Chelsea, that needs to stop. If Tuchel's to be a success, that needs to stop. Where in 6-7 months' time, there's going to be 11 players left out the team. Right, for whatever, there'll be 3 or 4 of them really out of form, not producing to their levels, because that's the nature of the beast, that's football. Now they can't go through their agents or go through to anyone else and start utterings of being discontent and letting that fester. And then, because I feel that there's an influence that goes on, and it wouldn't have happened, for instance, in the 90s, it just wouldn't have happened. And it wouldn't have happened probably in the noughties. Imagine Ferguson. If he would have found out 3 or 4 of his players' agents were talking to,
no chance,
and that's just what I want to see. And it's not a bad thing to say. Exactly, it's not a bad thing to say about the way that the system is at Chelsea. Like I said, because they can all sit there and argue that we've been successful, and I'd say, yeah, well, you got to roll your hands up to that. But if I want the club to be more successful, it's got to be stability. And I just feel that there's a mistake was made letting Frank go. I don't know much about Tuchel, but hopefully time will tell whether I'm right or wrong on that.
I mean, arguably, Carlton, I'd look at that and think about Tuchel and think he couldn't, I think it was Harry Redknapp's come out this week, but he made an okay run at PSG. He's not smashed it to the level that I look at him and go, oh wow, he's a next. He's not like is it Algeri from Juventus or someone like that, where you're going, oh yeah, he's a world class coach. I think he's good, Tuchel, but I don't know if it's that step up from Frank.
No, but the problem you've got here, right, and this changed, in the inception of the Premier League, right? Before the managers were in control, the Fergusons, the George Grahams, those type of managers, they were in control of the football club. The players now run the football club, because now if you've signed 4 or 5 players, you're paying them. Say you're paying them between 175 to 300 grand a week. Which is easier to get rid of, the manager or the players? So that's what happens. And that's where the problem comes in. My worry is I was so pleased when they decided to go with Frank, because I thought, you know what? They can't go into the transfer market. Look at the players that Chelsea have had all the years. They've had De Bruyne. De Bruyne went from Chelsea and lost his way. I remember seeing De Bruyne as a kid playing in the Hong Kong Sevens, and he'd lost his way, went to Germany and come again, because these kids need to play. Tommy Abrahams has been in Villa, set the place on fire, scoring goals. He's then come back. He's done it in the Premier League. He won't get a look in now at Chelsea now with the new manager, because the results become the most important thing. And that's where the problem is now. 2 things. It's the players now are in control with the money, because if they decide they're unhappy, they down tools, the manager's going to go. It's so difficult now being a manager because you haven't got time. You look at Frank, he's had 5 defeats. I played in the Sheffield Wednesday team that went to 2 cup finals. I think we didn't win a game in the first 10 games. The manager would have got the sack under these circumstances, but yet we finished in the Premier League and went to 2 cup finals. If I'm unhappy, I'll go and see the manager. If then I want to take it further, I will say to the manager, listen, I want to speak to the chairman. If I'm in my job now, I will still go to whoever's the next person in charge before going further. But some of these players now, they get the agents, they go straight to the chairman, bypass the manager. Now the manager can only pick 11 players. If you're at the top club, you need a big squad because you want to challenge on all fronts with the Champions League. You've got players who play for their country. You want to challenge on all fronts, so you can't keep every player happy. And it's like Joe said, players have to be honest with themselves. Am I out the team because I'm not playing well? If I'm not, we'll knuckle down and get on with it. But they don't. There's like, oh, well, because I've been bought for 50 or 60 million, I should be playing. No, you should be playing because you deserve to play.
The one I can't get made around is Kepa, the goalkeeper, right? It seems like there's been a massive thing with him and the relationship's broken down with Frank. I'm like, he can't complain about that because he was arguably the worst goalkeeper in the Premier League last year. He was terrible. Yeah, and yet Frank still carried on. You get Mendy in and they go on a run where they're not conceding any goals. So how can Kepa then go to someone and say, oh, it's unfair the way I've been treated? You've not done it on the pitch.
No, and I totally agree with you. And that's the problem now. Like I've said to you, players aren't honest about their performances and how they're performing, and they think they have a right to be in the team. Players shouldn't have a direct line to the chairman. They should only be allowed to speak to the chairman when they've gone through the manager, if the manager allows them to do. Do you know what I mean? If you did that with Jose Mourinho, you'd never play for his team again or play for him again.
No. I mean, I had plenty of discussions, arguments with Jose. Like, I think we talked about it before. Like, I really get on with Jose now. I love, like, I can't have the Jose haters because I just like straight talk. I liked it direct, straight, and he would always give me that. And we ended up having a row, but it was never anything where, I always understood he was the boss. I've been sitting here thinking about, because I'm considering one day stepping into the phrase being management. And when you see things like what happened with Frank, you think to yourself, I'll stick in the studio because it's such a tough job. And I was thinking, how do you counteract that? So my thoughts would be, the first time I stand in front of a team at the start of pre-season, you got your team, you got your staff, and I'll sit down and address it, and I'll just ask them, listen, chaps, this is how we are. We're all men. Some of you might be 37, some of you might be 16, 17, but we're men. Once you pull that shirt on, you're a man. You could be playing against men. I'll say, right, do you want me to treat you with kids' gloves, or do you want me to always give you my honest opinion? My door's always open. I'm going to have to play 11 of you, 3 subs, and there's going to be 7 or 8 of you disappointed. Some of you will be injured. You have to have that communication with your players, and the chairman or the owner has to understand that this is what it is. And as soon as the owners or the chairman or the board start getting involved into footballing decisions, questioning your team selection, they're not there every day of the week. They're not there watching training. They're not there analysing the way that the players behave around a training ground. They don't know the group, the dynamic. So as soon as that's very clear for me. For a successful football club, it needs owners, boards, deal with the business side of things. You have to have trust in your manager to choose the team, select the tactics, how set the culture around the club from day to day, and the players have to buy in. And I say, listen, if I tell you you're not playing because you're not playing well, or you're not training well, you're not doing this, you've got to accept that. And if you don't accept that, then you're not right for this club. And that's what I've come to in my head of thinking, that's got to be the way to do it. And you have to stick the way through that.
So, I'm sorry, mate. It won't work, mate. It won't work, mate. Honestly.
Really?
I've been there. I've been a manager of 2 clubs. Yeah, it won't work, mate. I'll tell you now, I've been a manager of 2 clubs. You ask my missus, she's in the other room now. When I resigned from Mansfield, she said to me, Carlton, do me a fucking favour. If a chairman rings you up again, tell him you're interested. Right? I was manager of Mansfield Town, right? You've got a budget. My budget was what the budget was. To get promoted out of that league, you needed to have a budget of 1.5, 1.6 million. Yet the crowd want you to get the club promoted. So if you go to the PFA now, you can get the budgets of every football club. And if you go through the leagues, all the way through the leagues, without fail, the top 4 teams or the top 5 teams are the biggest revenue that of all the teams in that club, in the leagues, right? That's fact. There's no argument with that. So if you've not got the biggest revenue to get promotion out of League One or the Championship or whatever, it's not going to happen unless you're there for time to have to bring through young players. You've got a problem now. I'm in charge of Mansfield Town in League Two. I've got players who are driving Range Rovers, and I know what they're earning. My top players pay players on £1,600, and he's coming in a 70 grand, 80 grand Range Rover who won't listen to what you say. You've got a squad of 22 players, right? 22 players, right? A lot of them are young players. You take a player from Arsenal on loan, as I did, or one of the Premier League clubs on loan, and they think they're too good to come and play at your club. And then you've got the added bonus now of that you can't lose 2 or 3 games. You can't chuck a young kid in. I would never have played and had the career I did if Big Ron didn't have the ability to throw me in as a 17, 16-year-old kid at West Brom to see how I did and leave me in for a few games and not worry about it, because the performance, he was always worried about performance and developing football players. That has all gone, Joe. What is it about now? It's as simple. And that's why Jose manages the way he does, because he understands the game is at the moment. And the game is just results-based. And if you don't treat a player in a certain way, the player... So say, for instance, Dele Alli. I think he's a terrific football player, right? But he's not going to play for Jose Mourinho unless he gets the other side of his game together. But he hasn't got time to be nice to Dele Alli because he won't be in the job long enough. He understands that, So the problem is, Joe, when you go into the football club, you say all those things. You would have got away with it in our era, because our era, we had players with integrity, we had players with character, we had players who want to play the game. I hear today so many players from low down to high up, right, that, they're only playing the game because they can earn a lot of money. Chris Waddle, who was one of the best players I've ever played with or witnessed done in a football pitch, he still plays football league on a Sunday, gets up on a Sunday morning to go and play in shitty pitches to play football because he loves the game of football, right? You ain't got that now, Joe. You haven't got that. So if you're going to go into management, you've got to have that cutthroat mentality. That's why I won't go back into it. You have to have that cutthroat mentality where you go in there, you say to the chairman, right, I'm in charge of footballing matters. Anything else you can take care of. Tell me what your budget is and tell me what you expect for me to achieve. And once he says to you, if he says it's halfway in the table, if he says it's in the playoffs, if you think it's realistic and you can do it, take the job on. And then you've got to go in there and treat every one of those players exactly the same as if they would throw you under a bus, because that's exactly what they will do if they're not getting they're not getting your own way. That's as simple as it is. And I, for one, did not want to manage that way. I didn't want to, like my missus said to me, Carlton, all you live for is the results on a Saturday. Not the training, not the preparations, not whenever. Joe, when I played football, I loved every bit of it. I loved going into training. I loved match day. I loved everything about it. Nowadays, as a manager, you're going in there. I've been there with Nigel Pearson at Leicester. Nigel Pearson is, he's just a top bloke. Craig Shakespeare's doing the training because Nigel's been in hospital, right, with his heart, his blood pressure and everything. And you know how many managers are in that same state? Now you're talking managers in the Premier League. What about them managers who are managers in the lower leagues who are on 25 grand, 30 grand? When I was manager of Mansfield Town, my wage was 34 grand a year, netted down. My maintenance was 60 grand a year. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not doing it for the fact that I'm earning money. I'm doing it because I love the game. You're going to put up with all that shit.
Ready almost is like being sort of like the Emperor of Rome. You're just being ready to be stabbed in the back, right? That is what you're there. And obviously you knew Frank as a player. Frank had an amazing relationship with Roman as a player. But there's sort of leaks out of the club and people saying that there was players there who just didn't talk to for months. And is that something he's prepping himself in the head to go, this geezer here is going to stab me in the back. I need the close people around me, the people that I know, whether it's, your kids he had last year, the people he knows are loyal to Frank, and anyone outside he doesn't want to let into that circle. How does that work for you there? And that's for both of you. Well,
sorry, I'll jump in there because I felt what Frank was coming to, and listen, I've known Frank since I was young. I'm friends with him, but I purposely sort of, the job, whenever you spoke to him, the job takes over your life, a club like Chelsea. So, let him get on with things, little messages here and there. But from that, really, I'm an outsider, right? I didn't want to be involved and busying myself around the club because there's enough ex-players doing that, right? I worked there for a year. I did my badges there. And the academy at Chelsea, I've praised it through the hill. It's one of the most elite performance environments for young players in the world. It's brilliant what they do over there. And I sort of kept my distance purposely because I felt that was just the right thing to do and let him go on with it. But from an outside perspective, what I saw, what he was trying to do, and I thought it was clear today as a football man, he was trying to change the culture of the players within them. And he was, and the reason I say is, I think he nearly got it because you had your Callums, your Tammys, your Reece, your Mason Mount, and Billy Gilmore's, and there was a core ready to be developed and moulded, and then the club could have built around that and brought the quality in. And that's why I think his first bad run is realistically of his tenure there, 18 months, and he gets sacked. You have to remember as well, it was only 50 days before his sacking, he was top of the league, and
yeah.
It's just a tough one. It's a tough one to take. And I'm emotionally invested in it because when it's your mates, you want them to do well. So maybe I'm not the right person to analyse this. Maybe Carlton have a better view in it than me. But I just think he was so unlucky because he was trying to get that culture, the core culture right. And Chelsea would have had off the back of that. And they still can 10, 15 years of even more success of what the last 20 years has been if you get that right.
Well, listen, I know Frank. I'm not as close to him as you are, Joe, but I know Frank well enough. I mean, we've been we've met up in Dubai and so forth, right? This is not from a personal point of view. This is just me as a knowledgeable footballing guy. It's a crazy sacking. You brought him in. I don't believe Frank would have got the job, if I'm being honest, if they were allowed to buy money in the transfer market. So they brought him in and they can't do any business in the transfer market. And yet he's delivered 4th place and an FA Cup final place, right? So if he's now developing, because look at those young players, if he can develop those young players, instead of you going out and buying 80, 90 million, you can sell one of these players, bring in 89, 90 million. And then have, like Alex Ferguson did, a factory that Man United have had for years and years and years and years. Fergie knew it. Fergie's a very clever man. He knew he was going to go, so he didn't start rebuilding and bringing in young players. He dried that side. He squeezed every last bit out of that side, and then he was off, right? So he could have allowed Frank to do that, right? He's got enough money that, okay, if they don't win the league title this year, no problem. But if they finish, I honestly, last year I didn't believe they'd finish in the Champions League. This year, I believe that players, when you're young, you're not used to playing the Premier League. It takes you time to get used to it. Those players were going to settle down. When they settled down, they were going to be good players, right? And I believe that Frank would have gone on to have a very, very good season.
The question to you both now, I suppose it's the big question is what do you think Frank does from here? What because that is the job of all jobs, right? The Chelsea job felt like his job. That's probably aside England. What would you say is the next move for him?
Okay, big man, right? So I think Frank, knowing him how I know him, he'll dust himself down and he will become a top manager. 100%. I have no doubt in my mind he'll do that. And also, I was going to throw out there now as a little asterisk on it as well. Chelsea have reappointed managers before in the past on a few occasions. Jose, it's not out of the question. He gets back there at some point in the future if he wants it. But knowing Frank how I know him, he's the most driven, focused footballer I'd ever seen. And I'm convinced he'll become a top manager. And I'm I hope one day Chelsea benefit from that. You know, he'll get there for me, 100%. What do you think, Carlton?
Well, listen, Frank's been a top player. If anybody does anything in their life and they get to the top of it, they've got something inside of them that's different to other people. So Frank's got that. You know, he's going to be obviously bitterly disappointed. But as you say, he'll dust himself down. He's got to now be careful about the next job he takes. You know, like I said, he's got to get it right. He's got to get the thing right with the chairman. Get what his remit's right. Get the right fit for him. Get the right fit for his team, and give himself the best chance to go on and be successful. Because listen, it's not just about you know. It's about, if you look at George Graham, and don't get me wrong, I think George Graham was a really good coach, but he took over at Arsenal at the time when you had the likes of Tony Adams, Ray Parlour, Rocastle, people like that in the reserve team. In that, you know, he brought in Lee Dixon, he brought in Big Smudger, Alan Smith, but he had the basis at the football club. And sometimes that's the way you can drop into a situation. So he's just got to pick the next job, make sure it's the right job for him. And I'm sure there's no doubt about that. Frank will be a successful football manager, given the right circumstances.
You're watching All to Play For, brought to you by Joe and Coral.
Listen, Alan, you're welcome to come down and have a run out. We only play 9-a-side now, and it's an age range from... We've got some lads that are in their 60s playing down to like...
Oh, careful. All right, don't get too excited.
Check out the full video now to find out why Rob is Alan's first winner.
So one of my favourite bits of this show, Carlton, is, and it can get insightful, it can get deep, and it's about the show that me and Joe call What Really Happened. Now, the question that's come in for you is that in 1992, Carlton, Eric Cantona has fallen out with pretty much everyone in France. He decides he wants to move to England. First team he went on trial with was Sheffield Wednesday. Do you have any memories of that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I remember Eric coming in. Actually, I got on really well with Eric. He was staying in the same hotel as me. He liked to drink, and you know what Eric was about. Even then, he had the swagger. You know what I mean? He's unbelievable. So, unfortunately for Eric, I believe he was recommended to Trevor Francis by I think it was Michel Platini, and it was snowing when he came to Sheffield Wednesday. He came for a week, so we went up to a place called Aurora where they got the AstroTurf, and we played 11v11, and there was a free kick just outside the box, and Eric was like, you know, he'll take it. John Sheridan was there and whatever, but Eric wanted to take it. So Eric took it and put it in the top bin, you know? And so everybody's looking at it and thinking, fuck you know. But it was a lot of money at the time for him, and they asked him to come back for another week on trial. And as Eric does, he says, no, Eric doesn't come on trial, and didn't come back.
I mean, it must have been an amazing thing just to sort of see after that where his career took him and what happened to it. I mean, he arguably became the most famous man in the country after that. But I mean, what an amazing thing just to sort of think of having a trial as Eric Cantona. And I mean, that, when you both talk about how football's moved on, could you imagine talking to Eden Hazard and saying, mate, we'll sign you, but you've got to go and have a week's trial?
Come for a trial on the Astro.
Yeah, you're just not going to get away with it, are you? Sometimes, unfortunately, with big players and big transfers, there is an element of gamble in there. Because, you know, you look at Howard Wilkinson when he signed Tony Yeboah. You know, yeah, he'd done what he'd done in the Bundesliga and whatever, but it was a huge gamble, and for you, and huge money, you know, big transfer fees, big salaries. And look at the success Tony was. You know, Eric was a big part at Leeds. He was a talented player. And there was only probably Howard Wilkinson who would have allowed Eric to go from Leeds United to Man United. And then I think Man United was the platform and the manager in Howard Wilkinson, in Alex Ferguson, that Eric respected, that allowed his ability to shine through in the end.
You talk about one of my favourite ever players there, Carlton, in Tony Yeboah, and what a player he was, and what a goal scorer he was. I mean, what a highlight reel that is when you watch his goals. There's one thing that I've always wanted to ask you: was it against Wimbledon? You scored an absolute worldie, right? You scored one of the best goals you ever, and then Tony goes and scores a better goal. Was it Wimbledon, the game?
Well, it was Wimbledon, and I'll tell you what, it's an absolute nightmare, to be fair to you. I score an unbelievable goal. I set up 2 goals, and he gets he gets all the fucking headlines.
This is another one this is actually just a weird thing I got told this thing as, like, through a football fan, a mate of mine who's a Leeds fan, who told me that he got addicted to Yorkshire puddings, Tony Yeboah. When he was up there, he was eating, you
Good
get the
taste.
meals.
Good taste, big Tony.
It might just be one of those fans fucking rumours that they say. But they said to me, you can get a whole dinner in a Yorkshire pudding, and Tony Yeboah would go to the pub. He wouldn't really drink, but he'd just have these Yorkshire puddings, and he got right into them. Is that a true thing, Carl?
I don't know about that, but whoever said Tony don't drink, he does drink. He's been out with me on a few nights drinking. Don't worry about that.
It's a weird one, though, when you think about it's actually a better way of doing things where you get like a trial with a player for a week. If you're spending that kind of money, if you're going to buy a car, you take it for a test drive. You don't just rock up and go, I'll take that. So maybe they had it right back then. You had to go and have a little test drive, little week's test, and see how things balance out, I guess.
Well, I think if you're spending the type of money that Eric was going to be commanding in terms of the transfer fee and his salary, that was unheard of at that time. It's a huge gamble. So why not get him over for a week? Unfortunately for it, I think Sheffield Wednesday probably would have taken Eric if he'd have been able to train all week and play. The conditions were terrible. So they weren't to take that gamble. I understood why they didn't do it. And if you look at Leeds United, he didn't really. In the year Leeds won the title, Eric was a big part player. He was on the bench. He came on for the last 15 or 20 minutes. So it didn't really hit the ground running. There was no question about Eric's ability. I mean, he was a phenomenal football player, but sometimes people need a platform to play on. And, Howard Wilkinson is a great man, and he's a great, I've got a lot of respect for Howard. But Alex Ferguson, the platform of Man United, it was a stage set for Eric, and with the players around him to go on and have the career that he did have at Old Trafford.
Great story, Carlton. It's been, honestly, amazing having you on. It's been you've been amazing. Will you definitely come back, join us again? It would be great to get you on again.
Great to see you, Joe. Great to see you looking so well. Thanks a lot, Tom, and hopefully I'll get to speak to you again soon.
What a legend there, JC, your man Carlton Palmer. What a guy.
Great player, great character. Do you know what I mean? And he whenever I listen to Carlton, he's obviously he must be 10 years older than me, if so he's on me. But he was that senior player when I was coming through at West Ham. That kind of he brings that energy, And I just it reminds me, brings me back to when I come through, and I come through with your Ian Wrights, your Neil Ruddock, your Winterburns, your Pierces, like them old players who come from that school, which schooled me.
I want to end this on a real before we go to predictions. As you can imagine, I've been buzzing all week because Champions League, we're having a laugh. West Ham, mate. Is it?
Mate, I said I half joked about the title, didn't I, 4 weeks ago on BT Sport when I was doing my show, and Jake gave me a little bit, and I'm like, I look at all listen, I was joking title wise because there's so many great sides, but this is as good a West Ham side as I've seen for a long time. Barama, Souček, I love him. I was talking to Noble about the team and the players, and he was like, Joe, this is even at that start when they said, listen, we've got some proper players here. This is a very, very good team, and they come through a difficult spell, rode it out, and I'm so pleased for the fans and for Moisey and everyone.
We talked about management here, right, Joe, with Carlton and yourself there, and I think it is worth saying that the stick, West Ham fans, me included to an extent, when David Moyes came back in, we weren't necessarily all like over the moon about that. And as a club moving forward, I think now all of us should be forced, to eat our hats, eat our words, because he's not only put us, we're fourth in the league, but we're hard to beat. But at times we're playing, for me, we're playing good football. How high did you rate Moyes?
in this crazy game, we've seen Frank get sacked. You know, Big Carlton, talking about Nigel Pearson got sacked at that absurd time by Watford, and see where they are at the moment. You know, David Moyes, that you don't like again with Carlton playing for England, you don't manage that many games at the top level without being a top manager. And David Moyes is a top manager, and I'm so pleased that the club recognised it, held on to him. You know, because fans can allow to shoot from the hips and be emotional. And listen, David Moyes is never going to be Harry Redknapp or a West Ham legend like an Alvin Martin or someone Paolo Di Canio who come and took the job. All the fans would love it, but he knows how to manage a Premier League football club, and he's slowly building West Ham. I hope the owners not only just stick by him, but help him bring the right characters in the door that can step up. Imagine, big man, Champions League football at West Ham.
Oh man,
Barcelona coming to town, or Real Madrid coming to town.
I think the interesting thing as well is what he did with Everton. I think Everton, he had that strong team, like the team we are now. It was strong, hard to beat, and then he slowly brought in your Artetas. He brought in players who could play a bit, and yeah, I mean it's so genuinely so exciting for the first time in a long time. I'd probably genuinely since you guys, you that team that Harry brought through, of you lot, you know, that was the last time I remember thinking, you know, maybe that last season under Bilic at the Boleyn, but you sort of even then it was. You know, it was a different feeling to this. It feels like you've really got an experienced man in control, and you know,
yeah. From your mouth to God's ears, big man. I'd love to see it. I just can't wait to get back into the stadiums and watching football again and seeing all the fans going. And I think when the West Ham fans come back into the Olympic Stadium, it will feel different for the fans. Because they got a team they can get behind, they got a manager they can get behind, and I think the place will ignite again, the atmosphere. You know, all the talk about Upton Park, all of that will slowly dissipate into the past and go and make it your home. And I think that's where we're going.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
One thing, should it be Champions League? Should it be the champion winning the league? Mate, I can't wait to have that first pint with you over at the London Stadium.
It'd be brilliant.
Can you imagine the drink we're going to have, Joe?
We'd get Big Carlton in. It'd be good on a night out as well, wouldn't it?
Big Carlton. He'll love it, mate. Listen, I'm going to go from me and you, very happy about this, right, to talking about saying there's been a bit of a kick in the guts for me this week. Last week, so the week before last, prediction-wise, JC gets 0% right? This week, Joe Cole gets 3 out of 3 correct. It's unreal. Gareth Barry also got 3 out of 3. I mean, there's an argument. There's quite a few people on Twitter who said you have copied Gareth Barry. He's a good man to copy.
He's just like the geezer, isn't he? Like smooth. I copy Dream Field anytime.
And I've got 1 out of 3. So look, it's not looking great for me. We go into this weekend, right? Okay. I'm going to let you go first, by the way, because I've seen your. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. Here we go. 3 games. Here we go. First up, Arsenal v Man United. I'm going to do the odds this week because I think it's worth seeing the odds. Arsenal versus Man United with Coral. 15-8 for Arsenal. Draw 5-2. Man United 29-20.
I'm going to go Arsenal. Just off the back, I think. I love what Ole's done at Man United. I think he's doing a good job, but I do think they're slightly punching above their weight for where they are. I think Arsenal, a game like this will suit them a little bit more open. So I'm going to back Arsenal.
I'm going to go draw.
That was my next bet. I don't think United will win.
No, I've got a feeling they won't. So now we're going to go Leeds versus Leicester. Leicester 17-20, draw 14-5, Leeds 3-1.
Again, 2 good teams, exciting. I can't split them. I'm going to go draw.
Oh, well,
you wanted a draw, didn't you?
I've got a weird feeling on this. It's difficult.
It's difficult, mate.
I might just plump for it and go Leeds. In my head, it's Leeds. We've had Carlton Palmer. He's a Leeds legend. I'm going to go Carlton. Yeah, I'm going to go for Carlton Palmer. That is. I'm going to go Leeds. Finally, top of the table, Champions League clash. West Ham versus Liverpool. West Ham 16-5. Draw 11-4. Liverpool 4-5. That's all with Coral.
I'm going to go, and you're going to hate me for doing. Oh no, I'm not. No, I was going to go. I'm going to go draw. I think it'd be a good draw for West Ham. Yeah,
I want to go
of course
West
you
Ham.
are, but I knew you was going to go West Ham.
I want to go West Ham.
I can't back against
only
West Ham, even in this game, the way they're playing. Draw. I think they get a draw.
I'm not only going to say West Ham, I'm going to tell you the score as well. It's going to be 2-0 West Ham.
Mate, that's bold. That is massively bold.
I've got... Antonio is going to be having a party.
What price?
Last couple of times we played Liverpool.
Giving you a price, I know for that.
Let's get a price on that. 2-0. It's 25-1.
Okay,
I'm going to jump on that.
I hope you're right.
That's with Coral. Listen, JC, it's been an absolute honour and a joy chatting to you. As always, you've been listening to All to Play For, brought to you by Joe and Coral. I've been Tom Davies. He's been Joe Cole.
What's with a Barry White voice? It's got very, very soulful there towards the end. I loved it.
Really soulful end.
Very smooth.
You've been watching All to Play For, brought to you by Joe and Coral.